Hello, welcome to the first video on the social influence topic. In this video we're going to be looking at types of conformity and explanations of conformity. These are very different things and we need to be able to clearly state the difference between them and pick up the specialist terminology as we go along. We'll also look at two pieces of evaluative research as we talk through this as well.
1, 2, 3.
So we have a definition of conformity. Conformity is when a person's behaviour will change or their opinions will change. And this is because of pressure from other people. Now this can be real pressure that's put on them, or it can be imagined pressure that people just feel like they're under. But it's about this change in behaviour and opinions. Now we have a suggestion of different levels of conformity. And this is by a psychologist called Kalman. And they state that conformity could be shallow, it could be intermediate, or it could be deep. Now shallow conformity is just called compliance. Intermediate conformity, according to Kalman, is called identification, and internalization is the deepest level of conformity. So we're going to look through these in turn. Now let me be clear, these are types of conformity, not explanations, these are types. So type 1, compliance. This is kind of agreeing to go along with a group, but actually you kind of keep your personal opinions. You're just kind of going along with the flow. Now, so that your behavior will change, maybe temporarily, but it'll change back very quickly afterwards. Next, we'll have identification. So this is a deeper level of conformity. This is where we actually quite value being a member of this group. So we kind of want to be liked by them. So we'll conform to how they behave, maybe how they dress, and their ideas, so we feel part of the group, even if we don't really fully agree with everything that they do. And then the final type is internalization. So as I said, this is the deepest level of conformity, and this is when you change your opinions or behavior to the extent that they match the group, but actually it results in a permanent change in your beliefs. So those are the three types of conformity. So I said there were two explanations. The first one is informational social influence. So when we're in a situation when the correct behaviour that you need to do is uncertain, you've got a task and it's kind of ambiguous what needs to happen, what we'll do is we'll look around us and we'll look at the people who are carrying out an action around us, and we'll use that as a guidance point on how we're meant to behave or what we're meant to say, because we want to be correct in what we do. So informational social influence will end up resulting in internalization because we've looked around to see what other people are doing. We accept that as the correct answer, and then we'll try and learn from it, and we'll then internalize those thoughts. So we can imagine ourselves maybe our first time at a fancy dinner, and we sit down, we look at our plate, and there's knives and forks, but there's many knives and many forks, and you know there's going to be a few different dishes served, and you don't know which knife or fork to use first. Now you know there's probably a right answer, but you just don't know it. So of course the first thing you're going to do is you're going to look around the table at people who are more experienced maybe, and when the dish comes out and they choose a particular knife or fork, you'll go for the same one. And then what you might do from that process is learn how to eat at a fancy restaurant, and the next time you go to a fancy restaurant, you'll be the one using the right knives and forks. Normative social influence is different. Normative social influence is when you want to appear normal. You want to appear the same as the majority. And we do this because we want to be approved. We don't want to feel like we're rejecting them and they're rejecting us. So quite often we will behave in ways that we kind of know perhaps are wrong, but we'll do it just to be liked. So normative social influence results in compliance. So we will go along with the action, we'll do the action, but it's at a superficial level, and we might not agree with it, and we might change our mind afterwards.
Evaluative research.
So we have some evaluative research for normative social influence, and this is by Asch. Now we're going to go into a lot of detail about Asch's study in the next video, but let me very briefly draw it out for you. Participants were placed in a room with a range of other people they thought were the participants, but they weren't. They were confederates. Confederates are people who are friends of the experimenter. They know exactly what the experiment's about, but they're acting along in order to trick the participant. So the participant was placed second to last in this group of people, and they were shown two cards. On one card was a line, and on the second card were 3 lines with A, B, or C listed under it. Now, what the job of the participant was to match the length of the one line to one of the 3 other lines. And this was an unambiguous task. It was clear which line matched with the line on the third card. But what the participant didn't know is these people are confederates, and when it took their chance to guess, in critical trials, in trials where the experiment was really running, they would guess the wrong line, or they would say the wrong line. So you can imagine yourself in this situation where there's a whole group of people and they're each saying the wrong answer, and now by you saying the right answer, you're effectively kind of going up against them saying, well, you guys are clearly wrong, this is the right answer. And that's quite a difficult thing to do. Now, what happened was participants would often choose the wrong line in order to fit in. And when people were interviewed afterwards, people said they conformed because they didn't want to feel rejected by other people. So this does show that people will be compliant in their behavior so they can fit in and be approved by the majority. Now, as you can see, this task is kind of strange. It's probably not something that you've ever done in your life, and that's a criticism of some psychological research. If we're asked to do a task in psychological research which isn't like tasks we would do in real life, we would say the task lacks mundane realism. And we might argue in this case that conformity will act differently in real life situations than it does in this artificial environment and this artificial situation. Now, for more information on Asch, including a breakdown of its findings, we'll watch the next video. So to evaluate informational social influence, we've got a classical research here from Jenness in the 1930s, who got a jar full of jelly beans. And you might have played one of these games before where we guess how many sweets is in a jar. And it's not easy to tell. You know, there's a lot in there, there's no way of knowing for certain, and it's very difficult even to think of the range. So how he set up this experiment is he got participants first of all alone to guess the number of jelly beans in the jar. So because there's no obvious answer, we had a range of responses. Then what he did is he got the participants together in a group and he got them to talk about the number of jelly beans in the jar and have a discussion about it. Some of them would choose large numbers, but generally the group would talk about the numbers in a relatively consistent way. Then what Jenness did is he got the individuals to guess again individually and away from the group what number of jelly beans are in the jar. Now they're away from the group, they didn't need to agree with them to fit in, but the number that they guessed then moved closer to the group guess. So this shows that when information isn't easy to access, we will conform to a group guess or to those around us. So again, this, even though we might have guessed jelly beans in a jar, this is still quite an unusual task. So again, we might say that Jenness' task lacks mundane realism. So how might we evaluate these ideas further? Well, clearly some people do conform, and maybe most people do. But we certainly know of situations and individuals who are more able to resist this pressure to conform than others. And these theories of informational and normative social influence don't seem to apply to them. So there are questions about why that is. Okay, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a like. If you haven't already, click subscribe to be updated with new videos. And also, if you have any questions about the content covered during this video, please drop a comment in the comments below. If you see a question and you think you can answer it, then please give that a go as well. Thank you very much. Until the next episode of PsychBoost.